Hi, and welcome to the show. My name is Cheryl Vercammen. I'm the Mayor of Marine City, and this is another segment of the Mayor Minute. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Justin Westmiller. He is the Director for Homeland Security and Emergency Management for St. Clair County. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So I always like to start off with, tell me a little bit about yourself, your education, your work background, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So I spent 20 years in the U.S. Coast Guard, retired as a lieutenant commander, spent 3 tours here in the Blue Water area, both enlisted and as an officer, retired in 2016 as the Deputy Director of the National Search and Rescue School, and then worked a couple different odd jobs before coming up here and becoming the Director for Homeland Security and Emergency Management in 2019.
Mm-hmm. So you've been all over.
I have.
Yeah. Working in the Coast Guard, where are some of the cool places that you've seen?
So when I first started out my career, I was on a polar icebreaker and went down to Antarctica and broke ice down in Antarctica, and then came back up to Michigan and was on a small boat stationed in St. Clair Shores and then up in Port Huron, and then made it over to the East Coast and was stationed at the Academy for Officer Candidate School. And then farther south in North Carolina on the Outer Banks for 2 tours, and in Washington, D.C. for my unfortunate staff tour as an officer. And then I bounced around a little bit more here in Michigan, down in Detroit as an officer as well.
Very cool. The Antarctica thing, how cool is that?
It was awesome. How many people do you know that can say you've been to Antarctica and done things like play football with emperor penguins and things like that? So it was great.
Very
Enjoyed
cool.
it.
Yeah.
It was awful cold, right? But
yeah.
We had a great mission there. We broke about 25 miles of what's called sea ice to get to McMurdo Station and allow them to replenish their fuel and supplies for the incoming winter weather. So that's the mission.
That was your mission, yeah. That would be so up my alley. That's so cool. So your job title is the Director for Homeland Security, right?
It is.
And what does your department do?
So we do all sorts of things. On the Homeland Security side, we are the liaison for our local, state, and federal partners, which means we basically keep the conduit of information for any issues or responses or anything bad that could happen, or keep the information flow going for any threats to the community. We work with people like the Michigan State Police, people like the Environmental Protection Agency, our friends at Eagle, the U.S. Coast Guard, our CBP partners, anybody you can think of in that chain that we can pass information to, request response from, all those different things to make sure that our community is protected from any threats that may arise.
Yeah. What does EAGLE stand for?
So EAGLE is the old DEQ, right? So it's the environment.
You don't have to be precise, but it's
the old DEQ.
Quality.
It's environmental quality.
Okay. All right. And where are you located? Where is your office located?
So currently our office is located out at the St. Clair County International Airport.
So are you protected to get in? You have to obviously pass security to get in?
Our building is secured, yes.
Yeah. So how do you, if a disaster occurs, and I know there's many, many, many different kinds of disasters, but what is the main vehicle or the main way that we inform our residents if something major is occurring?
So if something major is occurring at any time, if it's an emergency, you always call 911. That is the easiest way to get information to my office, to any law enforcement agency, to any fire agency. In an emergency, that is always the best way to provide information to that ongoing emergency. If it's not an emergent issue, but you want to get a hold of our office, you can always send an email to emergencymanagement1@stclaircounty.org, and that will get directly to our office, to everybody in our office, and we'll provide you whatever assistance is available in whatever timely fashion is needed.
So if there's something like a train derailment or something,
that is a 911 call.
That is a 911 call, okay. So to notify the masses, though, sirens? Do we listen for
we have
that?
a multi-layered system. We have what's called WINS. It's basically, you've seen for all of our lives, the EAS system, or the system that comes across the TVs and radios. It's emergency alert system. Well, in the county, we have a system that connects with that system called WINS. It uses a platform called Everbridge, and we have the ability to set off those alerts that connect with the EAS system, and we can type out whatever alerts we want. We have the authority to issue all of those alerts with the exception of weather alerts. The National Weather Service holds that national authority, but we can issue all the other alerts, and that comes directly from our office.
And how often do you train for disasters? What is your training like in your department?
We hold at least 3 exercises per year, but in an average year, we hold usually at least 6, depending on what the year has in store. This year, it looks like we're going to have at least 5 exercises, and potentially more, depending on what happens throughout the year. In the last 2.5 years, because of the pandemic, we had, I think, 2 less than the 6 that we normally have, just because we were wrapped up in pandemic issues. But this year looks to be like we're back on track.
And you already mentioned what agencies you partner with. And you had mentioned CBP, which is Customs Border Patrol.
Correct.
We used to have a ferry crossing in Marine City. And when that, obviously the issue happened with the causeway on the Canadian side, do you, I don't want to say agree with, but we'll never get that back, obviously. That property's been sold. But do you like the fact that is no longer a border crossing because you can regulate it better at the bridges, right? You have more equipment.
Well, I don't have anything. That's not a county level issue at all. That's a federal level issue.
True.
As far as the Marine City impacts, I hate to see that economic hit to Marine City. It was, even personally, it was a very valuable crossing. When I was younger, we would cross and go play hockey on the Canadian side there. But I certainly don't have any impact from a positional sense on that. That was from a port director at the federal level's decision.
Yeah.
But I do hate it economically for you all in Marine City.
Yeah.
It definitely was a hit.
Yeah, we did. We took a hit on that for sure. So I was looking at your website, and you have 72 hours be ready. Can you explain that?
Sure. So it's widely known that for any emergency, any issue that could cut you off from others, could cut you off from response resources, you should have a kit that includes all the resources you might need to sustain yourself for up to 72 hours before rescue could get to you, before emergency resources could get to you. And we recommend that you have, all of your medications, all of what your family would need, including water, food, blankets, a radio that works on batteries or has a crank, flashlights, candles, gasoline for your portable generator, whatever you would need to potentially, stay alive and stay mobile to keep yourself alive. That's what we're asking for in your 72-hour kit, so that you can be viable until resources can get to you.
Right.
That's what that means.
Yeah. A lot of people don't have that.
Agreed. Which is why we made it one of our top priorities to push in our messaging. It's why our Facebook posts talk about that quite a bit. It's why it's a key item on our website.
And just like a tote, right? You're just talking
Absolutely.
a couple of totes and have them marked,
or a rack in your basement where you put all the stuff.
Right.
Just a spot in a closet if you don't have a basement. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not asking you to be a prepper, right? You don't have to get crazy, but a small trunk somewhere, whatever you can set aside that has a decent shelf life to it, that can help keep you alive in an emergency.
Yeah. Well,
especially in these times. Right?
Especially in these times, right? You never know. They sell. My son's in the Army, and he, always talks about the MREs, and you can buy something similar to that, if not, that has a lot of calories and easy to open, and a lot of dehydrated food, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah. It was so funny because I was watching a show, and somebody had made a kit. And they said, don't forget a can opener.
That's right.
Right? You got cans, don't forget
and
a can.
Make sure it's not an electric one, right? Because you may not have electricity. People forget. We take electricity for granted, and you can't, because like we found out in September when we didn't have power in many areas in our county for 3 or 4 days. There's a lot of issues when you start running out of power. You won't have cell phones. And many people in our county don't have landlines anymore. So communications break down. There's a lot of problems when we run out of power. So you just got to kind of keep your eye on things you may not have that you tend to rely on.
Right, right. And one of the things that I have, like little sticky notes that I put in different places, and I put people's phone numbers on them because we don't remember phone numbers anymore. Back in the day, I can remember my childhood phone number. Nobody remembers phone numbers because you're just dialing in.
Well, now we added 3 more digits to it, right? Because we added the area code. And now you're really in trouble if you can't get to your telephone's phone book. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What does shelter in place mean?
So kind of along the same things as the 72-hour thing that we were talking about. You should have the supplies available to stay where you are and block all the vents and be able to create a spot wherever you are to keep everything out that's trying to get inside, or keep everything inside that's trying to get outside, if that makes sense. So the good oxygen you have inside, keep it inside. Anything bad, such as a hazardous material or smoke or whatever's trying to get inside, keep it out. So it's basically a barrier. Create that barrier to keep everything out. And that's what we're talking about.
You had mentioned blocking the vents. Cling wrap?
Cling wrap. That 4 mil plastic, the plastic rolls you can buy at the hardware store, duct tape. Get yourself a box of that thick plastic and a good duct tape, and you'll be well on your way.
That's good to have in your kit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it lasts forever. What should each home have in their disaster kits? We obviously mentioned that already. Candles, you mentioned candles.
Yes.
What type of candle?
Honestly, I'm not too picky when it comes to candles. I don't care if they're smelly candles, emergency candles, candles with 3 wicks, 1 wick, doesn't matter. Have a lot of them.
Yeah.
If they're smelly, maybe that'll help if you haven't had a shower in 3 days, good for you. But just have a lot of them. Now be careful, right? Because now you have something burning potentially in a small area. Make sure you have somebody paying attention to it. Be careful with flames, but have candles available. Have flashlights available. Have a crank flashlight in case you don't have batteries or you're run down on batteries. Just be as resourceful as possible. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I like the jar candles.
Yeah.
They even say to keep one in your car.
Absolutely.
I have friends that travel up to the UP, and in case they get stuck, they have a little kit in their car.
Yep.
And one of it is it's a jar candle, because this is what they read, that if you are stuck, like in the snow, you can light that candle, and just the heat from that little flame it's not going to keep you warm, but it's not going to keep you from freezing.
That's right.
So
I always keep extra blankets and extra jackets and hats and gloves in our vehicles for that same reason, right? If you roll off the road and nobody sees you because nobody's around you, you may be stuck there for a few days until situation changes. Just be prepared for that. The little heat packs that you can buy from the store, throw a bunch of those in all your cars because they may save your life.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I don't think we realize it because, we live in Michigan, we vacation all over the state, including the UP. The UP is wilderness.
Absolutely.
It is wilderness.
You would be amazed at the number of state troopers that are running around the UP in the wintertime. That number is not what you think it is. It's and that's no shot at anybody. That is, the resource availability is very small in some of our less populated areas. That's just how it is.
That's the way it is.
And people need to be prepared for that so that you can ensure a higher probability of safety.
Yeah, yeah, because it could be hours and hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in a resource constrained environment where many people are asking for service at the same time, and they don't know you're there because you haven't been able to call, and then they get a missing persons report, and then they have to go looking for you, and that's just continuous time added. So take your safety upon yourself.
Yeah, for sure. We have spring thaw coming. Let's talk about flooding.
So we're actually doing really well right now. A week ago, I would not have said that. The ice, it looks like, has cleared out, and the lake ice will probably not make it down here from the Sioux, at least not in any sort of major fashion, which is good news. We have had heavy ice all winter long since probably early January. And we did have a threat of a flood a few times, but we never really got to that flood stage where we had water impacting homes this year. That's very good news. There's probably a few docks that got moved around a little bit, which is unfortunate. But we did pretty well this year with flooding. I know there was some land impacted in the East China area, but we did not have any homes flooded out this year, which is a good year. And we expect the water to continue the downward trend this summer, which is really good news. So that's kind of where we are with flooding.
Yeah.
We had a very deep freeze as far as frost this year, so it will be muddy for a while, but we don't expect the water to rise, which is good news.
Yeah, yeah. Can you explain a little bit about the lake ice and where we get our ice on the St. Clair River? Obviously, we're getting it from Port Huron because the river's slowing down. But even further up than that, you say the Sioux. Yeah,
normally when we get a warm up, we won't get ice from the Sioux. It takes an awful lot to get that. What we'll get is from where the thumb crosses through the lake, we'll get all that lake from the southern all that ice from the southern end of Lake Huron. It will try to come down and come through the St. Clair River, and that's what jams up from Algonac through Marine City and sometimes into East China if it gets into there. Where we have our biggest problem is in the beginning freezes, that ice breaks up and then slides down the river and then fills in and breaks up and slides down the river, and it just stacks on itself. And then because our winters are so cold through the end of January to the beginning of March, it freezes very hard and then gets snow mixed in. That snow gets wet and freezes in, and it basically glues itself together and stacks all the way to the bottom from the tip of Russell Island to like the north end of Fawn Island, for all the residents that know where that is. And that really makes things tough. And when that water can't get through there, it creates a dam and backs the water up through East China and the south end of St. Clair. And everybody screams for icebreakers, and that will sometimes relieve the pressure. But what we're doing is, just like any other time, when you break ice, you're making more ice because that ice piles up and shoves that ice deeper down and refreezes. So the best thing we can do a lot of times is continuously move ships through to keep that channel where the ships are going through, keep that water moving. If we can keep that water moving every day, that will relieve that pressure just enough to keep the water moving and to keep people from flooding, at least as much as possible. If we continue to break that ice, we may be making it worse. It's always a careful balance.
Right, right.
And I get it, right? I lived on that river most of my life growing up in East China. So we were doing the same thing, and until I learned it, you know, being both an ice officer in the Coast Guard and being on 2 icebreakers, I didn't understand it either, but now I do. And in my position, it's unique because I don't have any resources, and I'm in the middle. Well, actually, I'm at the beginning where the residents call my office. I have to call the state, who then calls the federal people. It's, you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but that's the process. And for domestic flooding, the Army Corps owns the operation, but the Coast Guard owns the resources. And oh, by the way, the Coast Guard shares the operation with the Canadians. So it's like it's a whole puzzle to make it happen.
Right.
But everybody's very good at it. you just can't like warp speed. This isn't Star Trek. We can't warp speed an icebreaker from the middle of Lake Erie to get up here. It takes 8 hours. So there's a lot of moving pieces to make that happen, and we've figured out a pretty good process now, and we're working through it. But it doesn't happen immediately. There is transit times and getting people to places, and so
Yeah.
and we're at the nature of it, right? We live on a river.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've all seen, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Absolutely.
About
and I
the
feel
river.
for everybody.
Right.
Nobody wants anybody to flood. That is not ever anybody's wish. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen. But sometimes Mother Nature wins, at least for a little while, until we can put her at bay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is amazing how quickly that river can rise.
Absolutely. It can happen within 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Especially with a north wind. That's where it's worst. When you stack all that ice, you might be okay. But if you get a 25, 30 knot wind blowing down on that water, shoving it up against the dam, you're really in a bad spot.
Yeah. So when you're told to move your car, you better get out there and move your car.
Yeah.
Or leave.
Or if somebody puts a warning out saying, now's a really good time to maybe put some sandbags out. It might be a really good time to do that. Yeah.
But we're not out of the clear yet. When do you think is the official, well, I mean, I know it's all weather dependent, but, I've seen flooding in April,
Yeah. The good thing now is that we've cleared all the ice out, and it will be very difficult for any ice up in the north end of Lake Huron to get down here and cause any sort of problems, because Lake St. Clair is in the deeper areas is pretty open. Even though we're still seeing some ice in Anchor Bay, that doesn't really matter because there's a lot of open water in the middle of the lake. So even if we get some ice that comes through, it'll just go out into the lake and end up in the Detroit River.
Yeah.
So we're okay at this point, I think.
Good.
I think we'll be okay.
Good. Let's talk about tornadoes.
Okay.
What's the difference between a watch and a warning?
All right.
Many people don't know this, and it just amazes me
Absolutely.
still.
So I will say also that this month is always severe weather month, and we're gearing up for that as we always do. You will hear additional radio information on that, and we'll put out social media stuff on that. But the difference between a watch and a warning is a watch tells you that during this period of time, it's expected that the weather will be appropriate for the potential for a tornado. And a warning is that a tornado has been spotted either on radar or visually by weather spotters or appropriate emergency personnel. They've actually put eyes on it. And that's when you'll hear the sirens go off if we've been given the appropriate time, right? So there are times when a spotter says, it's right over my house. And those are called zero time warnings, which if the first call we get and they don't see it on radar is it's right over my house and it's on the ground. Well, we'll set the siren off, but you'll get a it's happening now warning. And those are very frustrating for people, like, why didn't I get a warning earlier? We would love to give those warnings earlier. We just did not have the opportunity. You got it as quickly as we got it. We had 2 of those last summer, and a lot of people were very frustrated. Trust me, I will give you as much warning as I can every time. And we'll do the backup on that, and we'll find out why it wasn't given earlier. And if we got it at zero time, I'll let you know that. But we aim to put it out as quickly as possible to give as much time as possible for people to take cover and get to their basements or their shelters or wherever they need to go, especially for our public that are in mobile homes or homes that don't have basements that need to go somewhere else.
Right. Where were the tornadoes last year?
I believe we had 2 that were up in the north end of the county. And luckily we had no injuries, which was really good news.
Yeah, yeah. So a warning, or a watch, when you hear that there is a watch, right, conditions are ripe and you should be watching.
Or you don't have to sit on your porch for the next 8 hours and watch for it, but just, have your phone with you, because tornado alert or tornado warnings will come over your phone now. They will come via the National Weather Service, and they will beep like an Amber Alert kind of does. It's a different alert, but it will come over your phone. It will also come over the TV. It will come over the radio. You will know that there's a tornado warning. Now, tornado watches won't necessarily come over your phone, but they will come over your TV. They will come over your radio, and they will, if you have any sort of weather alerts like the Weather Channel or any of those like WeatherBug or anything like that, they will come over those. I recommend, if you're going to download a weather alerting system on your phone, FEMA has a really great weather service, and they alert everything. You have to actually check and uncheck what you want to be alerted, or you'll get everything. So be careful what you ask for on that, you'll get it.
Yeah.
But it's a really great service. And you can pick multiple areas on that too. And you'll get alerts, and you'll actually get the text too, so it'll tell you from this time to this time, et cetera. So.
Yeah. I mean, there are some, weather is always so interesting because it's so unpredictable, and it's Mother Nature, right? I mean,
I say meteorologists and medical doctors are the two people that continue to practice, and sometimes they're right, and sometimes they get close, and sometimes they're wrong, right? And they still get to practice.
Yeah, yeah.
Is what it is.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me to watch film footage of a tornado, you know, not necessarily like in a populated area, but when you can actually watch, you know, the storm chasers and they're in fields, and, you know, how quickly they can, you know, all of a sudden you see you've got movement, you've got some circulation, and then it's coming down. Right. You know, and it can come down that quickly. Yeah, I saw a tornado form once, and all of a sudden you're watching this cloud, and you're looking, and you're like, I see like circulatory movement, and the spike came down, and it came down.
Yeah, and sometimes it's touched down before it shows that it's touched down, because the debris is what shows that it's touched down, which is kind of scary. So you know, that's all the dirt in the air and everything else.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I try to stay as far away from them as possible. They scare the crap out of me. So.
What other weather emergencies do we have? Like, you know, major snowfalls
and ice systems and heavy rainfall. Wind is a really big one. You know, the heavy wind, the 50 mile an hour, 60 mile an hour issues, that's where we lose a lot of power and have a lot of trees down, and can cause a lot of different problems. Those actually worry me some. You know, those can cause secondary things like electrical lines down that cause fires. We had that issue back in the spring last year where a major electrical line went down and caused a fire at a plant that had some pretty bad stuff in it. So we had to kind of hop on that. I think those are some of our major weather issues. 2 or 3 years ago, we had a pretty heavy weather system come through, and it actually raised the water level in the St. Clair River and then dropped it out real fast. But it caused a kind of mini tidal wave to come through.
Like a little tsunami?
It was what they call a meteo tsunami, and it did. It pushed the water through and lifted everybody's boats out of the water and slammed them back down. And we got a bunch of calls on that. So there's always unique weather issues that come through our area that we pay attention to.
I mean, I'm a big boater, and one of the things that I like to do, and I don't understand why more boaters don't do this, is when, you know, you're out and you're having a good time, you see a system coming in, you can clearly see it across the lake or wherever you're at. Everybody wants to leave and head right toward,
right to it.
Yeah. And it's like,
it's a really
my group, we hunker down,
right.
Throw an extra anchor in, put up your canvas, and a lot of times it passes right past you. But I don't understand this have to leave mentality. Just stay where you're at, and a lot of times it clears and you have a beautiful day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I don't understand. You know, having spent almost 21 years in the Coast Guard, I will just call it job security. And maybe we can let it go at that.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about a little bit of snow. What about, like, well, you mentioned wind. We are getting, it just seems to me, we were just talking about this the other day. I've never remember growing up having all these wind warnings.
I agree. I don't know if I've seen as many heavy wind warnings as we've seen in the last couple of years either. And I don't know if we're on some sort of 100-year cycle. I could probably ask that question and find out. But we have had a lot of heavy wind issues in the last 2 or 3 years. But I remember having a lot of really heavy thunderstorms, and I don't think we've had that many heavy thunderstorms as we used to have either. So I think that there's probably some sort of cycle that we're in right now. I could probably find out. I don't know for sure, but it could be we're just getting more warnings than we used to on that sort of thing too. And there's a lot more infrastructure now than there used to be as well. So it's probably impacting more.
What to do about lightning strikes?
Yeah, so that is one warning I know we're putting out a lot more is lightning warnings because there's been a lot more, there's been many more people hurt by lightning. There's been a lot more damage done by lightning. And obviously if there's a lightning warning put out, please get inside or get to safe shelter. Pay attention to those things. It can obviously hurt you. It can obviously damage things. And it's just much better to, if you're out on that golf course, get inside, don't hide under a tree. If you're on your boat, get to shelter as quickly as possible. Obviously, if you're in the middle of Lake St. Clair, it's going to take you a few minutes. Get inside. If you can't get back to dock, anchor out and get inside the hull of the boat and do your best. You know? But don't be the tallest thing out there. You might have some troubles for sure.
Yeah, so if you are out on a boat, you want to bring your antennas and stuff down.
Absolutely. You want to lower your profile as much as possible.
Yeah. When I was growing up in Detroit, there was a girl that went out, and I'll never forget this. She went out with curlers in her hair, running because there was a storm from her friend's house because they just did their hair to home, and she got struck by lightning.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. Because back then there was metal curlers, they weren't plastic, you know, and so where are the shelters located in St. Clair County?
So we have a whole list of shelters, but in many of our communities, the Lions Halls are shelters. Many of our fire departments are shelters. And if you're in a community and you don't know where your shelter is, go ahead and send our office an email or give our office a call. You can reach our office. You can reach me at 810-989-6325. We'll tell you where the nearest shelter is. You can also send our office a message off of our website, and we'll get you the answer to where the nearest shelter is. And that should set you up. But usually your nearest fire station would be a shelter in a time of need if there was an issue.
What is FEMA? F-E-M-A?
Federal Emergency Mangement Administration.
And what does FEMA? Because we hear that term a lot. What is that, or that part of the federal government do?
So FEMA is a part of DHS, and FEMA is basically there to administer response and recovery funds at the federal level for presidentially declared emergencies. So you have an emergency and everybody's like, when's FEMA coming? Well, FEMA doesn't come unless it's a really, really bad issue.
Hurricanes.
So, right. Hurricanes, major floods, and they have to be really bad, right? Because first it's the county level, then it's the state level, then it's the federal level. So the damage totals for public infrastructure to get to the state have to be pretty high. The state doesn't really respond to private impacts. That doesn't matter, and I use matter just in the response portion. It matters, but they don't use the private impacts until it gets to the federal level. So think earthquake response. That would be, those kinds of infrastructure failures would be when it gets to the FEMA level, and it's called the Stafford Act. That's how presidential declarations work. It's all laid out in the Stafford Act, how those things work. it takes a lot to get a presidential declaration via the Stafford Act. And we have not seen impacts, even though we've had a lot of flooding along the river. You would have to not have federal flood insurance either. That's when those impacts would count towards a federal impact. And many of our homes, not all, but many of our homes have federal flood insurance. And that program doesn't need a declaration to pay out. Now, I get that it doesn't pay out enough, but it does pay something out. And that's about what you would get from a FEMA declaration if they found you eligible, which is a whole long process too.
Yeah.
FEMA does many other things too, right? They do a lot of different grant programs, like the hazard mitigation grant that many of our communities have used in the past and will continue to use in the future to harden things and make things better so that we don't have the same hazards that we had in the past. There are other grants that our police and fire agencies get to be better at fighting fires and have better equipment to do police operations, things like that. So they do many things.
So was FEMA involved in the Flint crisis?
They were, I believe.
Yeah,
I
that
can't
was
speak
major
for sure, but that was a presidential declaration for that, so they absolutely were.
Yeah.
I just don't know what they did. I couldn't speak to that.
Yeah. Let's talk about water.
Okay.
Purifying our water. Is it? I mean, we have good water here in St. Clair County. You know, it's okay to drink from the tap.
It is.
You know. So if you were to, what's the best way to purify water if you wanted to take it another step?
I mean, you could purchase a reverse osmosis system for your house if you wanted to take it another step further. You could obviously boil it for, what is it, a rolling boil for 5 minutes. I think different survival stores have the little tablets you can put in there and let it sit for whatever the directions say. There's many different ways if you want to go above and beyond the standards that are already set by all of our different municipal water authorities. You know, I feel pretty safe, I know, with the city that I live in with their water standards. They go above and beyond the state's water standards and the federal water standards. So I'm not aware of any issues with any water standards in our county.
Yeah.
I haven't really, it's not my area of expertise, but I know locally I haven't had any issues with mine.
Yeah. What should the public do in, like, we're going to talk about different, like, scenarios. An accidental chemical release, train derailment, the train is carrying, you know, several cars of, you know, ammonia or, you know, whatever. And obviously you live near a train rail, so how would they be notified and what should they do?
So if they see the accident, they should immediately get upwind of that incident. You never want to be downwind of a hazmat incident, and then immediately call 911. You want to get out of the plume of whatever's being released and immediately call 911. The fire department will immediately respond, and if need be, they will request the county's hazmat team to respond. The hazmat team will work with the responsible party, which is probably going to be the train company, and they will get with the train company, and if they can, they will attempt to stop the leak if possible, and if not, the train company has a company they work with that can come in and stop the leak and begin the cleanup. And while that's happening, local authorities will decide, along with the train company and the hazmat team, if there's an evacuation required, and if so, they will effect that evacuation. While that's all happening, the incident command post will be stood up, and the EPA and Eagle and Michigan State Police EMHSD will be involved, and there's a plethora of things that'll happen after that. But the immediate things will be evacuation, stop the leak, and get everybody upwind.
Yeah, yeah. I never thought about going upwind. What, that's the simplest
Don't
thing.
want to breathe it in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That's the simplest thing. Same with like you're on the expressway and a truck topples over.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Absolutely.
Get away from it. Call 911. Yeah. If there is, first off, how do our residents contact your agency? You kind of mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, but we'll do it again.
Yeah. So again, you can email us anytime. If it's an emergency, call 911.
Yeah.
Period. If it's non-emergent and you just have a question for our office or you need something, you can email us at emergencymanagementone@stclaircounty.org. If you have something you'd like to talk to somebody on the phone, again, you can email us and just have us call you back. Or if you want to talk to me about something, you can call me at 810-989-6325. And you can, as always, leave a message on our website. And you can hit us up on Facebook, too, at Be Ready St. Clair County. And I think we have Instagram. And
Yeah. A lot of people follow the website or the Facebook page?
yeah, I think we have about 11,000 people.
That's pretty good.
Which is pretty good.
Yeah. What is it?
Be Ready St. Clair County.
Be Ready St. Clair County. Yeah. Good. And obviously there's free information available through those
Absolutely.
sites. Does your department do mailings to every home?
We don't. Because we have the other outreach capabilities and we don't have an enormous budget, we tend to try and do our outreach in the most expedient and economical way as possible.
Do you ever go into the community and have talks, seminars?
Whenever someone would like me to, I'm always available.
Good. Anything else you want our residents to know?
Just want them to know and want everybody to know that if anybody ever needs anything, obviously emergency, call 911, but anything else, feel free to contact us at any time.
Good. All right. Thank you very much. My name is Cheryl Vercammen. I'm the mayor of Marine City, and this was another edition of the Mayor Minute.